And I don't know about you, but I think what went on with COVID and who's responsible for it, the destruction of our economy, the craziness around the abuses related to vaccine mandates and other public health mandates that have been so controversial, the arrogance of Dr. Fauci in pretending he wasn't doing something in terms of funding gain and function research when in fact he was, those are pretty important issues. Well, one of the other accountability crises here in Washington, D.C. has to do with our public health agencies, which in my view are just as corrupt as the other so-called deep state agencies we've been concerned about in the past. The National Institutes of Health, Fauci's sub-agency there, the National Institute on Allergy and Infectious Diseases, HHS generally, the CDC. I mean, we've seen during COVID, all of those agencies are terribly corrupt. They have contempt for the common man. They have contempt for political leaders. They have contempt for science. Yet they've been using the powers entrusted to them by the American people to abuse the American people. They've been working with big tech to censor the American people who have objected to their abuses of power and their refusal to use common sense and to really follow the science in their COVID policies and other abuses related to their response to COVID. A lot of it is self-interested in the sense that you have folks like Dr. Fauci and other individuals at NIH who were very much aware that they could be implicated in the breakout of COVID because of their support for gain-of-function research for the lab that has been tied most notoriously potentially to the emergence of COVID, the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, Judicial Watch, of course, has taken the lead on exposing this, finding the documents showing that it was gain-of-function research, finding the documents that showed how much money was flowing to these Chinese entities, finding the emails showing that they all knew, Fauci and others, going back years, that it was gain-of-function going on, showing that China was a troublemaker in this regard. And of course, the other problem is they were troublemakers too because they were partners with China. So we can blame China for the emergence of COVID, but to the degree it was a man-made virus, if indeed it was, then our government's partly responsible, namely Dr. Fauci. And one of the other concerns about Fauci and company is the conflicts of interest that were inherent to the way they operate there. You have these billions of dollars in grants, patents, and other activities that take place, royalties and other income that arise from their jobs for working for the government that they get extra money for. So Judicial Watch, with our partners at openthebooks.com, have been taking, again, the lead in trying to figure out what Fauci was making in terms of money, what his job duties and responsibilities were, and what others at the NIH and NIAID were making as they were acting, in our view, in a way that was hopelessly conflicted. I didn't know this until relatively recently. But did you know that Fauci's wife is a top official at NIH? I didn't. Well, now I do. We sued over it, because we sued for openthebooks.com for financial records of Dr. Fauci, but also now his wife. So what Judicial Watch did was we filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit with openthebooks.com against the Department of Health and Human Services for the employment and financial disclosures of Fauci's spouse, Christine Grady, who is a top Department of Bioethics official there at the National Institutes of Health. Now, again, this is, a simple request for information. These records typically are online. I don't understand why they're not online. But HHS failed to respond to an April FOIA request by openthebooks.com to the NIH asking for the records regarding Grady's employment contracts, modifications, and addendum regarding Christine Grady's regarding her since she was hired as chief of the Department of Bioethics. Any confidentiality agreements, conflicts of interest waivers. I love conflict of interest waivers. You get to waive conflicts of interest. Only in Washington do you get to waive ethics. ethics disclosures, and of course the financial or economic interest disclosure documents, and her current job description. Why is this a state secret? Why is it that we have to go and sue the federal government for this with a new lawsuit? And what I love about this work is that it's not just Judicial Watch asking the question and having to sue. This shows you the scope of the public interest work by Judicial Watch. We represent others seeking information. OpenTheBooks.com is a great group that specializes in exposing financial records and budgetary records and data about how the government spends their money, or your money, that the government hates having to disclose. And it's basic information, but because it's the amount of money is so outrageous, the government bureaucrats know they're better off keeping it secret. So that's why Open the Books is providing this useful government service or public service. Now, Judicial Watch represents Open the Books. We represent journalists, other interest groups, individual citizens and parents and such in pursuing records on behalf of the American people and obviously on behalf of the clients here. Now, the lawsuit asks the court to require the department to search for and produce all responsive records and order the department to stop withholding non-exempt records related to the FOIA request. So just to be clear, the National Institutes for Health is violating federal law and withholding these records from our client, OpenTheBooks.com. They're violating federal law in covering up the details of the financial records related to the Fauci family, husband and spouse, Dr. Fauci and Christine Grady. Now, we previously had the sue for Fauci financial records for OpenTheBooks.com. We filed a lawsuit in October of 2021 against HHS for these same type of records for Anthony Fauci, as well as royalties paid to NIH employees by outside entities. So as a result of that lawsuit, we helped uncover that over a 10-year period, Fauci and others at NIH received more than $350 million in secretive royalty payments from drug companies and other third parties. Now, we also have another pending lawsuit for Fauci's calendars and his calendar entries. So this is a basic information, again, that we've had to go to federal court. So not only do we have lawsuits again about COVID and the vaccines, which are mega lawsuits that have provided more information and basically everything we know about COVID and its origins and what our government's involvement was in funding the research that has been potentially tied to it. We've had to do this basic FOIA litigation for how much these people are getting paid, right? And basic financial disclosures of government employees. Now, you may recall last week we talked about how we uncovered how the FBI was investigating the Fauci agency grant to the Wuhan that involved gain-of-function research, further calling into question the honesty and whether Fauci testified truthfully to Congress. And I don't think it's any coincidence that after those types of disclosures, Fauci is telling the media that he plans to retire at the end of the Biden administration. Further, in my view, confirming he is a political operative as opposed to an apolitical government employee. Why would he tie his retirement to the end of a presidential term other than by frankly confirming that he's there for political reasons and not scientific reasons, as he constantly, and in my view, falsely asserts. Now, our client, Andrew Vesky, who is CEO and founder of Open the Books, said, once again, NIH is using taxpayer dollars to avoid transparency and leaving us no choice but to enter litigation that will also, again, burden the taxpayer. So, the government's happy to allow this litigation to go on because they don't pay for it. No one goes to jail for violating FOIA law, although technically I don't know if that would be possible. I don't think the courts here in D.C., which is basically a government-centric court system, would push that hard. It's time for NIH to stop routinely hiding information as simple as a job description and embrace basic transparency. And we thank our friends at Judicial Watch for helping us get the answers we deserve. And of course, we're happy to do the work. And so when you contribute to Judicial Watch, you're helping these other organizations too, you should know. And as I note, we have good reason to believe that these financial disclosure records will give Americans a more complete picture of the conflicts of interest that have compromised NIH and, frankly, Dr. Fauci. That our client had to file a federal lawsuit to gain access to this basic information speaks volumes. So there you have it, folks. Again, Judicial Watch is the tip of the spear in trying to figure out what Anthony Fauci has been doing at NIH. And again, it's a family affair when it comes to the Faucis. And so that's why we're investigating another top government official, his spouse, Christine Grady. So I think we have another lawsuit we just filed on Christine Grady. I think I'll talk about that next week. So it's not just, it's Judicial Watch doesn't play games. When we go and figure out there's something going on, we ask numerous questions and demand numerous answers. And where possible, if we're not getting the answers we are due under law, we go to court. And it's not just one lawsuit. We'll sue once, twice, 3, 4, 5, as many as it takes within reason to try to get the truth. And I don't know about you, but I think what went on with COVID and who's responsible for it, the destruction of our economy, the craziness around the abuses related to vaccine mandates and other public health mandates that have been so controversial, the arrogance of Dr. Fauci in pretending he wasn't doing something in terms of funding, gain, and function research when in fact he was. Those are pretty important issues. And the big media has zero interest in it. Congress is basically hapless in figuring out what went on. And so it's up to Judicial Watch to come to the rescue here and figure out the truth about this major, worldwide, in my view, worldwide scandal. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.